Hi everybody, this is Boogass Reviews, and today I'm going to be doing a review on the brand new McFarlane Toys autographed Kickstarter Medieval Spawn 3-pack. So before we take a look at the other medieval spawns, let's go ahead and take a look at the original version and all of its numerous accessories. So first up, you get this really awesome autographed nameplate here. My Todd McFarlane signature was done in gold. I believe there was silver, gold, and then silver and gold. As you can see, I got the gold one. Up next, you get this comic. The cover is remastered in red foil, and instead of being a straight-up reprint of the comic, it's just pictures of medieval Spawn. You get some cool pinups. I think that's by Greg Capullo. That's probably my favorite picture in the whole book. But yeah, you don't get an actual reprint of the original story. It does show a little concept art of what the original medieval Spawn was supposed to be like, and some cool promo shots of the original. Here the original issue is next to this one, and I love how they updated the art and the collars on it. That looks really cool. I'm not quite sure why they didn't reprint the story. Maybe it's because of all the stuff that went down with Neil Gaiman. I believe this is actually written by a different writer, but if I remember right, Neil Gaiman actually created Medieval Spawn. Up next, you get this Medieval Spawn base. This is quite different from all of the other bases that we've seen so far with Spawn figures because this actually has 2 pegs in it. So he can stand on that very well because of that. Up next, he has his Spawn logo clasps. He actually has different ones that you can change out. The alternate clasps are actually skulls, and I think I like these better. I just love the way the skulls look. Up next, you get his regular chest plate, which, man, it is so exquisitely detailed. Like, McFarlane Toys really pulled out all the stops with the sculpt detail on this. Now, to remove this, you will have to take the cape off. That's why I'm showing these off next. And it is magnetized. And that stays on there very well when you're articulating the figure and stuff. It doesn't fall out. So I'm really impressed by that. But you do get 2 alternate ones. You get this silver and gold one. And that looks pretty cool, but I don't think that quite fits with the rest of the figure. I don't know, I'm just not super fond of the way that looks. And you get the final chest plate, which is my favorite. This one has the collar scheme of the regular one, but it has a big skull in the middle and just a hint of gold paint towards the top. So yeah, I think that one looks fantastic. That's definitely the one I'm going to be leaving on the figure. Up next, he comes with these very detailed forearm armors. And man, these look really good. I especially love the sculpt detail to this one. I think it's entirely cast in black and has red, gold, and then gray for the spikes they're painted on. And that looks fantastic. This one also looks really good with the silver and gold detailing. Man, that looks very awesome. And these are magnetic as well. And I don't think I've ever seen that feature on a modern figure. I am just very impressed by the magnetized features on this. And there are his alternate forearm armor pieces. And I like these because these look similar to the original. I think that's definitely the ones I'm going to be leaving displayed on the figure. Just all the little textures and everything on that looks really good. The only downside to this, especially this one, is when you're posing it around with the weapons, sometimes you will knock it loose. But for the most part, these actually stay on really well, and I'm really surprised by that. Up next, he comes with this huge triangular shield. And man, I'm going to be saying this a lot, but the sculpt detail on this is crazy. All the little textures and everything that's sculpted on, all the rivets and everything. This has some amazing sculpt detail to it, and this is actually magnetized. The only complaint I have with both of his shields is that the strap back here won't actually fasten to where it's supposed to go to. The front one will fasten perfectly, and it'll actually stay on the magnet right there. So it does work, it's just this back strap doesn't. But because of the magnet and how secure it is up here, it does stay on the forearm very well. Whichever forearm you choose to put this on, though, you will have to remove the armor, of course. That way you can use the magnetized feature on it. Up next, he comes with the more classic-looking shield, and this looks fantastic. The sculpted wood grain looks really good. You get a bunch of different paint variation over top of it. The wrapping around the edge looks really good, and it stays on the forearm very well. Well, if I fasten it right, that is. But yeah, it actually stays on there really well because of that magnet. I definitely wish we would have gotten a third shield with arrows poking out of it, like the Medieval Spawn 3 figure. But we don't. Up next, he comes with this mace. And man, all of the details on it look really good. The sculpt detail is crazy, and the spikes on this are actually pretty sharp. Now on all of the weapons, this bottom piece slides out, that way you can get it through the hand easier, but they're constantly falling off me, so I did glue all of the ends down on all of them. I don't know if it's just an issue with mine, but they were constantly falling off, and I just about mixed up which end went to what weapon. So yeah, I just glued that down, that way I won't lose them. Up next, he comes with the Morning Star, and this looks really good. You get some really awesome texturing. I think it's cast in gunmetal and has silver painted over top of it. It's very loose in his hand though. It's a very thin grip, so it just kind of slides all willy-nilly. So it looks great, but it definitely doesn't stay in the hands the way it should. Up next, he comes with the Scimitar, a really cool looking weapon. I'm really hesitant to use this though, because of the way these spikes are sculpted on the edge. These feel really brittle, like if you dropped it, they might break off. So yeah, while it looks cool, I probably won't be displaying him with this. Up next, he comes with this extremely large sword. And man, the sculpted details on this is crazy. You get a bunch of sculpted skulls on there, as well as the Spawn logo. Man, that is sculpted really well. But since it's such a large accessory, it does weigh his hand down. So I'm probably not going to leave any of the Kickstarter medieval Spawn figures displayed with this because of how heavy it is. If I leave it on there, it might make his wrist peg really loose. It could either make it really loose and floppy, or it could break it. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend displaying the figure with this one. Up next, he comes with his regular sword. This is definitely the way that I'm going to be leaving the figure displayed. You get some amazing sculpt detail with some intricate pattern right here in the middle of the blade. It's painted in gold, and that just looks really good. McFarlane Toys did a very awesome job with this. And he actually comes with a sheath. Now on mine, this one is actually assembled wrong, because the belt is supposed to face the other way. This is supposed to face out, and this is supposed to go towards his back. So yeah, this belt is assembled wrong. But other than that, it looks really good. It's cast in black and has that red color painted over top of it. Some really nice gold and silver detailing. That looks really good. So getting this on Medieval Spawn is a tad bit tricky. I feel like it looks alright back here, but it looks a little funny on his back here. You can fit the sword down in it nicely. But yeah, getting this on is pretty difficult, and I'm afraid I'm going to rip it. So definitely be careful if you switch that out. Up next, he comes with this small axe, which is probably my second favorite weapon to display him with. I love all of the scratches and battle damage that's on it. I believe it's cast in black and has silver paint over top of it, as well as gold and black for the skull right here. And man, that looks really awesome. You also get this super spiky end piece that looks like the Spawn logo. And man, that looks very, very awesome. Up next, he comes with alternate hands, and when I switched them out, I did want to show how thin the pegs are. That's why I said I didn't want to leave any of the big weapons on the figure, because I feel like it could break those thin wrist pegs. Now, putting the alternate hands on is actually really easy. They just pop in like that, and they stay in there. But yeah, these pegs look really, really fragile. I used the set of alternate hands for holding this big axe weapon, because this is very huge and it definitely requires two hands. If you had just one hand, you'd probably snap that peg off. But man, that looks really good. I love the bat wings right there by the skull, the black wash you get, the texturing, the wash to the wrapping. That's just a really, really awesome looking weapon. McFarlane Toys did a very, very awesome job on that. I definitely wish it would have had rope tied to it like Medieval Spawn 2. I think that would have looked really cool, like a semi-homage to that. But it still looks cool nonetheless. Up next, you get this unmasked head, and man, this looks really good. The texturing on the head there, that looks very awesome. I think it's just cast in black and has the brown details painted over top of it, and that looks really good. I just wish they would have painted his teeth on. They just painted them in brown as well. I feel like the head is kind of tiny, but that's because you get this soft helmet that you can actually put over top of that. And that looks awesome, like it lines up perfectly. You can see the eyes through there. The texturing to the helmet looks really good. That just looks very awesome. Like I said, the head is a bit on the tiny side, but that is so you can put that helmet on there. And man, I love that you can actually take that on and off. That reminds me of old figures that you could actually take the helmet on and off. Nowadays, a bunch of companies do alternate heads. But yeah, I love that you can actually remove the helmet on this one. Up next, you get the Screaming Unmasked head. And I believe this is the first Kickstarter Spawn's Unmasked Screaming head, just retooled a little bit. Because that one, the head and the neck were one piece, if I remember right. And it looks like they used the same sculpt, but they just altered it to fit this one. And the details on this, well, except for the eye. The left eye got painted on a little bit wonky there. But aside from that, the paint looks really good. I like how you can see the slime in his mouth painted green, and they actually painted the teeth on this head sculpt. So yeah, this one looks really cool. Up next, you get this alternate helmeted head. I love the paint detail on this. That looks really good. But I can't actually get it to fit on there, because if I force it, then it's going to rip the cape right here. If this part back here on the helmet wouldn't have been there, I think it would have fit on there. I don't know why it's not really fitting on this one. So yeah, while it looks cool, it doesn't actually fit on there. You can kind of sit it on there and it'll stay, but if you bump it, it'll just fall right off. And for his final accessory, you get yet another helmeted head sculpt. And this one looks really unique. I love the look of it. It reminds me of something, but I can't place what it is. It's cast in gunmetal and has silver painted over top of it. And one of the coolest things ever is you can actually lift the faceplate up and see the head underneath. And it's detailed very well. That looks so awesome. I almost want to leave the figure displayed with this head sculpt because I love that. You just get so many options with the accessories and the armor pieces and the head sculpts. There's just so many ways you can display this figure, and I absolutely love that. And I still haven't figured out what way I'm going to display it because, as I said, there's just so many options. So now, let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the figure. So taking a look at the rest of the figure, as I said, McFarlane Toys really pulled out all of the stops on this. The sculpt to the chainmail is crazy. It's cast in black and has blue painted over top of it. And that is just done so well. The silver parts have a black wash to it that brings the details out very nicely. Even the straps are sculpted very well. There's not an inch of this figure that doesn't have some sort of amazing sculpt detail to it. You get some really intricate patterns sculpted on the shoulder pads there, which is, honestly, this is my biggest complaint about the figure. The butterfly joints are made kind of funny. It's on a double ball peg right here that attaches the shoulder pad to it so you can articulate it when you're posing the figure around, but it's really loose. You can see quite a bit of gappage right there. As long as you keep it up like this, I think it looks right and it does hide it. But if you look at the back here, you get so much gappage with the joints. If they would have been just a little bit longer, it would have looked fine. But yeah, if you don't have them like this, they kind of will flop everywhere. But like I said, I did find out that if you keep them up like this, they won't. Still definitely a nitpick, though. As I said, the chainmail has such insane sculpt work to it. Down here, it's cast in gunmetal and has silver painted over top of it. Even up here on the joints. I do wish they would have painted the joints a little bit because they are a very different joint than I'm used to seeing McFarlane Toys use. But it still has some very awesome sculpt detail to it. You get some really awesome texturing to the gauntlet right here. I think it's cast in black and has red painted over top of it, as well as some really nice tiny silver details that got painted very clean. That's a really fine detail that's painted on there very well. Even the cape, I love the little pattern that lines it. That looks really cool. You get a leather type of texturing, as well as some lighter red, or it's a weird color. It's kind of maybe orangish, and then some darker highlights in the folds. Man, that looks really good. I knew with this Kickstarter it would be so much more detailed than a regular figure, and it is. There's not an inch of this figure that doesn't have some very awesome sculpt detail to it. You even get some very awesome patterns on the back of the figure. That looks so cool. You get some skull pads right back here on the thighs. I didn't notice that for the longest time until I lifted the cape up. But yeah, that's detailed so well. I love how the armor fades from this blue into the silver, and then it has the black wash to it, and the little dots have gold painted over top of it. that looks incredible. You get the knee pads with the skulls. It would have been cool if it would have had interchangeable knee pads. I feel like that might have been a nightmare when you're articulating the figure. But I think interchangeable knee pads would have been cool. The horns on this one are actually pretty sharp. That really surprised me. Of course, you get the signature Spawn Big Boot right there, with some more really awesome patterns. I like how the Spawn logo is on each little segment right there. I think it's cast in black and the red's painted over top of it. This is cast in black with silver painted over top of it, and that gives it some really cool variation, as well as the tiny skulls sculpted right there. I'm a bit disappointed that the bottoms of the feet are completely black and plain. With all of the sculpt detail on the rest of the figure, you figured they'd at least paint it silver. But yeah, this figure looks stunning. This is easily one of the best McFarlane Spawn figures ever made, and probably one of the best medieval Spawns. I think Medieval Spawn 2 or 3 is still my favorite, but this one is still really good as well. So now, let's go ahead and go over his articulation. He has a ball-jointed head that can look up all the way. He can look down just about all the way. He can move his head side to side and all the way around very nicely. You get these butterfly joints that have a double ball peg right there, so you can articulate the shoulder pads really nicely. I think the strap got stuck in between this one. But he has shoulders that can move all the way out. He has double jointed elbows. Let's move this here. That can move in that far with the gauntlets on. If you remove the gauntlets, he can move in all the way. He has ball jointed wrists that can move up and down very slightly and spin all the way around. You might knock the armor off right here if you try to articulate it too much. I have done that a few times. Like I said, it does stay for the most part, but if you're articulating it or you bend it in too much, it could fall off. He has a ball jointed diaphragm and waist that can move back just a little bit. He can't crunch forward all the way. I'm very glad that he can crunch forward all the way. He can move side to side nicely up here. The waist joint feels a little tight. Can move around that much. He has hips that can do a complete split. He can kick forward all the way. He can kick back just a little bit. My second complaint with the figure is he has barely any thigh swivel. That is really hindered right there. So the two big complaints I have with this are the butterfly joints right here, and then the lack of a thigh swivel. You do get a little bit, but for being a Kickstarter figure, it definitely should have been better right there. He has double jointed knees that can bend back just about all the way. He has ball jointed ankles that can move down just a little bit, up all the way, spin all the way around, and toe articulation that can move up that far. So now, let's take a look at the black variation of this one. So taking a look at the comic, you do get a green foil comic instead of red. The inside is exactly the same. I definitely wish the collar scheme on the variant cover would have matched the figure. That would have been really cool. But the colors are actually the same except for the green foil right here. So taking a look at the rest of this Spawn figure, I'm not going to bother going over the accessories because the accessories are exactly the same. There's no difference in paint on this version. It would have been cool if the weapons would have been bloody or had some different paint detail to it, but they're all exactly the same. So that did bum me out a little bit. Since it is a variant, the least they could have done was just cover them in blood. I think that would have looked really cool. Surprisingly, I think this is probably my least favorite version out of all three. I think it actually has less paint detail to it. I know this one is cast in black and has blue painted over top of it, and I feel like the black on this one just looks really plain. It would have been cool if they would have done a dry brushing of silver over top of it, or some sort of variation. The articulation is exactly the same too. I'm not going to waste too much of this video going over that since it is exactly the same as this one. But yeah, all of the sculpted details are still the same and still look really nice, but I feel like it just looks a little plain when compared to this blue version one. And now we are finally to the final version, the silver version. Now, I love the different artwork on this one. It's black and white with silver foil on the sides. I think this is my second favorite of the comic covers. It just looks really cool. Just like with all the other medieval Spawns, all the accessories and the articulation is exactly the same on this one, but I think this is actually my second favorite figure out of all three of them. This has amazing sculpt and paint detail. I believe the whole thing is cast in gunmetal and has silver painted over top of it. There is tons of variation on this. You can see the variation to the cape right here. So yeah, surprisingly, this actually is my second favorite figure out of all three of them. I'm not going to say that I thought I'd dislike it, but I definitely figured it would be my least favorite out of the bunch. But yeah, the sculpt and paint detail to this is insane. That looks really good. I believe originally this was supposed to be done in a primer color, just like with the last Kickstarter Spawn figure, but it got changed to silver, and I'm really glad that McFarlane Toys did that, because this looks so much better than just a primer colored figure. The silver paint over top of that, it's either a dark gray color or gunmetal. That looks phenomenal. And like I said, it really surprised me that this is my second favorite figure of the bunch. It's just sculpted really well, just like the others, and painted even better than the black variation. It just looks really, really awesome, and this is how I'm leaving it displayed. I think with that helmet and this shield, he looks very, very awesome. So now, let's do some size comparisons. So first up, here are all the figures from this 3-pack. You get the variant, the original, and the silver version. And as I said, this one is definitely my favorite. This one is my second favorite. And the black variant is my least favorite. I'm not saying it's bad, but the paint detail on this one just isn't on the same level as these two. Here he is next to the first Kickstarter Spawn figure, and he is a lot bigger and bulkier than this one. You can't actually see him side by side because of how huge Spawn's cape is, but yeah, he's actually a bit bulkier than this one. Here he is next to the very first medieval Spawn figure. I couldn't find the color version of this one, but I did find my gold one, so you can see how the original looked compared to this one. And you can also see how much larger new Spawn figures are than this one. I think this one might have been like a 5-inch scale if I remember right. Here he is next to Medieval Spawn 2, which might just be my favorite version of the figure. I just really love this one. It has a bunch of really intricate sculpt detail. You get a really nice base. I definitely wish that there would have been a base with one of the medieval spawns that looked like this. I think that would have been really cool. And it would have been cool to include the skulls on the chain right there. That would have been something else that I would have thought would have been a fun little pack-in for this figure. Here he is next to the resculpted version of Medieval Spawn 2. They changed the collars on this one and gave him some new armor pieces. I did get this one loose so he doesn't have a base or the correct sword, but I still think he looks really cool. You can see more of an accurate depiction of his size without that base on him. Here he is next to Medieval Spawn 3. This was another figure that I got loose that I had to find some accessories for, but I think it looks pretty close to how he originally did. As I said, this is another one of my favorites. I just love the sculpt work to it. And this one actually had more articulation than the previous version. It's kind of weird that the following version had more articulation to it. Here he is next to the newest Medieval Spawn. This was from, I think, like a couple years ago. I did do a complete repaint on it. I added some real chains, and I think it really made a difference. The figure kind of lacked paint detail, but once you repaint it, it looks really good. It doesn't have the sculpt detail that this one does, but it does have some very awesome sculpt to it. Here he is next to the Cogliostro Collector's Club variant figure. And finally, here he is next to the Skull Splitter variant figure. And surprisingly, this doesn't scale too bad with Medieval Spawn. I really thought there'd be more of a size difference. He doesn't have ankle rockers, so he's not standing up perfectly straight. But yeah, he doesn't scale too bad with him. So overall, I hope everyone that wanted one was able to get one, because McFarlane Toys really exceeded my expectations with this. The sculpt work is exquisite. It has some very, very nice paint variation to it, and it comes with a crazy amount of accessories. As I said earlier in the review, you get so many options to display it. I still haven't figured out how I'm going to display it yet, just because of how many options there are. Between the weapons, the armor pieces, and the alternate head sculpts, there are just so many ways you can display all of the figures, and I love that. I haven't put this figure down since I got it. I have been constantly posing it around, switching the parts out, and I'm just really happy with it. As I said, McFarlane Toys did a very, very awesome job on this. So, that's my review. If you like this review, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching.